Spoiler alert. In the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice final, we saw a build order in Game 1 on Oxide that made absolutely no sense. It was just not a very good build order. Now, in order to understand why this build order worked, we have to rewind the time a couple of days to Group C, where Zest and Reynor played each other as well. On Oxide, the exact same map, where Zest introduces part 1 of the Mindgame. So, he opens up relatively standard, nothing too weird, okay? He's just gonna be going into your gateway, your assimilator, your nexus, your standard Stargate opener. He blocks his opponent and he says, hey, you're not gonna get your natural. You'll have to take it at your third base. Reynor says, well, that's fine, I'm used to this. Every TOS has been doing this for a very long time. There's nothing weird going on yet. Now, however, once we start moving further into the game, Zest does something quite peculiar, I would say. Rather than getting two different Stargate units, he opens up with Void Ray, which is already kind of rare, but in the current Void Ray meta, perhaps isn't the weirdest thing, right? Is it really that weird to open up with two Void Rays if most Protoss players have been opening many Void Rays at the same time? Nah, I don't think it necessarily is. On top of that, he also opens up with +1 air weapons rather than Warp Gate, pretending that it is indeed Warp Gate. I want to just take a look at a couple of the benchmarks, a couple of the things that Zergs would be paying attention to at this point, the things they see and the things they will get from that. So they see a delayed research on the cybernetic score, assuming it's Warp Gate. They know, okay, that's a Stargate opener. He will spot the Stargate and see a Void Ray first. Once this Void Ray is out, it will take care of this Overlord and thus make scouting of the main base a lot harder. Second gateway goes down, and at this point everything looks standard. This is exactly how Zest likes to play. Double Adept into a Void Ray with Warp Gate, and then a relatively quick third Nexus, which is exactly what Zest plans to show here. And it's exactly what he will show. Let's note the timing of this Nexus is about 3:53, which is a standard third Nexus timing for Zest. He gets fourth pylon at the third base, as he always does. The only difference from usual is that usually he gets an Oracle as second unit. This time he gets a Void Ray. But like I said, if you're a Zerg player in this position, it's only natural to assume that your opponent will be playing Mass Void Ray from this, because really, what else is there? There's Warp Gate on the way. Phoenix, I mean, doesn't make that much sense. It's just not that common anymore, especially from double Void Ray. And that's exactly what Zest does here. He follows this up with Fast +1 and Void Ray and Phoenixes. And he will use this as a very, very mobile force. Now, the way you want to defend against high numbers of Void Rays is usually by getting a lot of queens. The way you want to, and you want to kind of keep queens split together in two groups, 4-4, 5-5, so you can hold multiple areas when Void Rays try to bounce between bases, bounce between locations. Now, on the other hand, if you think about how you want to defend against Phoenixes, you want all your queens at approximately the same location, and you want to have spores ready so that your drones can die and your queens have a place to go to. Now, we see Reynor being very far forward with these queens. Very, very far forward, because he's expecting Void Rays. And versus Void Rays, you can always just walk away. Instead, these Phoenixes show up, the +1 is done, and just like that, 2 Void Rays, 5 Phoenixes, and boom. All of those queens get picked up and completely get destroyed by these well-upgraded Void Rays and Phoenixes, which hit extremely fast, 530. Okay, now the response here for Reynor ideally is that he gets a lot of queens, a spore per base, and he makes sure to keep the queens at home. Okay, another thing that would be nice is to have a lot of links, as his opponent doesn't have Warp Gate, doesn't have that many units, so links with +1 could potentially be very, very good. Now, this is important to set up the mind game for the game that we're about to watch, which was the game that was played in the finals, as Zest just actually straight up wins the game from here with this little push, straight up destroys Reynor. There's absolutely no chance for him. So Zest will win this game, and Reynor takes note of those things, right? He sees, okay, double Void Ray, that's interesting, and then there's a timing at 5:30. I know exactly what I should be doing against that. Now, we'll see what Zest decides to do in game 1 of the finals. Now, to give you a little bit more backstory, is the reason why a lot of Charge Lot all-ins or Glaive Adept all-ins are not very good from 2 Stargate unit openers anymore, is because they just hit slightly too late, and every single Zerg in the world has a Roach Warren, a lot of Queens, which means if they can just build 6-7 Roaches and they have like 10 Queens with Transfuses ready, you're never in a million years going to be able to break a Zerg player. It is simply not possible. Now, what Zest did though, with that previous game that we watched, is he put a seed of doubt in Reynor's mind. It's like, hey, will you actually need a Roach Warren if I open with double Void Ray? Or will you believe that I'm going to be doing the same thing? And Reynor played exactly, just perfectly into his hand. Zest, this game once again, is going to open up with that double Void Ray, but rather than going into 2 Stargate Phoenix, now we'll follow this up with a Charge Lot all-in. So it's really kind of a simple mind game, and the reason why Reynor fell for this is because Zest before has shown to be extremely stuck in his habits most of the time. Zest is someone that likes to do the same thing from the same opener. If he plays 30 games, usually 30 games will follow the exact same pattern. He loves to open up with the same gate units. He likes to have optimized builds. So it's very rare for Zest to do something where he'll open up, for example, with Void Ray, and then not go into the build that he usually goes from there. In PvT, if he opens up with Adept, he likes to go, for example, into Stargate. If he opens up with Stalker, he loved to go into Oracle Blink before. Like, these were habits that always were very, very clear, easy to see habits. And Reynor and most other pro players picked up on the fact that, hey, Zest is kind of predictable. And I thought it was so cool that Zest kind of waited such a long time to show that he was aware that he was showcasing these tendencies and these habits. And in the finals of the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice, he kind of played with it. He was known as a predictable player, a player that when he shows something and you know the signs, if you know what the signs mean, you should be able to counter it. But this time, Zest actually was going to flip the world of Reynor and instead said, you know what, I'm going to show you Void Ray, and I'm going to be going into Charge Lot Robo. Now, there were certain tells this game that this was something different. And Reynor could have and probably should have picked up on them. If we take a look at what Reynor has seen so far, is he's seen everything exactly the same. He's seen a Nexus, double Void Ray, and 2 Adepts. Just the same time. The Nexus was about 5 seconds delayed, but you can't read too much into this. However, there's one major difference. Warp Gate is finished here. And Reynor didn't pick up on this. This was a very big deal, because in order for Zest to push as fast as he did last time with those Phoenixes with +1, he needs to start +1 before the Warp Gate. And this was the one tell for Reynor where he could have known that it wasn't going to be the exact same build. He even scouted for it with a Ling. But his reaction is non-existent. Or if it is here, it is at least too late. He opened with +1. Went a lot of Queens, noticed that his Queens this time around aren't on the map like they were last time, already playing way more defensive, afraid of these potential Phoenixes and Void Rays, even though he's already gotten the information that this is not going to be the build. He still is playing as if it is going to be a Phoenix build. And this is just a little mind game that Zest played. He got into Reynor's head real good. And if this type of thing happens in the first game, this can completely ruin your game plan if you're Reynor. Because all your preparation that you did now feels pretty useless. If you just got played like a fiddle like that, I mean, what else can there be coming for you? No secondary tech structure, no Baneling Nest, no Roach Warren. And Zest is going into a Charge Lot all-in. with 2 sentries, but it's not too important. Now, if there is a roach warren here, or if there is a baneling nest on either one of these buildings, at this point would have been good enough. There would be larvae available, there should be money available, where at this point Reynor can say, hey, if I just build legit 8, 9 roaches here, I have 10 queens, I'm going to be completely fine. But instead, the only thing he can build is pure zergling. He's on 60 workers, he just built 7 more as he saw the prism. And only now does he start his baneling nest. Now spines are coming down. But it's too late already. The push has arrived. And Reynor isn't ready. He only has lings and queens. That's it. Upgrade hasn't even finished yet. It will finish soon. And just like that, Zest kind of picks up an easy win in this first game of the day. And it's so funny to see how someone that for so long kind of was known as a very predictable player, lacking some mind games in his play, or lacking some diversity perhaps in his play, this tournament has shown a lot of diversity and has shown that he's completely capable of playing with the perceptions of how other people think of him. And I think after I saw this game, I really didn't believe that it was possible for Reynor to win the series. I thought it was going to be extremely difficult, because if you have a player that with the skill of Zest that realizes how other people see him and plays with it like that, I thought that it's almost going to be impossible. The mental blow that he gave with this first game was absolutely massive. And even though the build that he just did here absolutely sucks, is awful and useless for general play, it was the perfect build for the Game 1 of the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice Grand Final. Alright, I hope you once again learned something, found this useful and interesting. If you did, don't forget to subscribe, like my video. If you hated it, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'll never do this again. Bye bye.